Gute Woche. This afternoon the Rebbe Gesundheit began the Farbrengen that today is Tu B'Shvat and it is also Shabbos Shira. Regarding Tu B'Shvat, it's the Rosh Hashanah lo Ilonis, it's the Rosh Hashanah for trees, and we know how the Torah stresses how man is compared to tree. Ki ha'odam eitz hasoda. And if we want to search for a lesson which we can derive from Tu B'Shvat, let us go to the original source of the pasuk in the Torah, where the Torah talks about the various fruits that Eretz Yisrael was blessed with. And that is the famous pasuk of Eretz Chito Usoira Ugefen, that Eretz Yisrael is a land of wheat, Chitim Usoira, barley, Gefen, and grapes. And as the pasuk goes on, until the pasuk concludes with dates, honey, Zay Shemen Udvash, which refers to dates, olives and dates. And the lesson we have right away in the beginning of this pasuk. Pasuk refers to Chita U'Sa'ira. Chita and Sa'ira are two different types of foods. Chitim is wheat, which is a meichel odom, which is food which is served for a person. However, sa'irim is barley, which this is usually the food that's served to behemoth. Chita talks about the food served to man, and man in a proper level, in a level of odom. As we know, man has 4 titles. And when we refer to him with the title of Adam, that is because Adamo LaElyon, he's compared to the Elyon, to the master, to his creator. However, when we're talking about Sa'irim, which is the Meichel Behema, though in Gashmis it is a Meichel Behema for behemoths, that this is basically their food, and it's explained at length in Gemara. However, we are referring to it here, how the level of Sa'irim relates to the Nefesh HaBahamis. And actually, every person has this Nefesh HaBahamis within him. As the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, how the Midas Kol Adam, the average person, should strive to be a Beinani. And this is Acheha Kol Adam Yimshech, and after this Midah, everyone should strive, everybody should make it his goal to become a Beinani. When we're talking about a Beinani, he has a Nefesh HaBahamis. However, he controls his Nefesh HaBahamis. So again here, this relates to each and every Yid. There's the Aveda of Chita, and there's the Aveda of Soira. There's the Aveda how the Yid serves the Rebishta mitzad his Nefesh Olekis, and then there's the Aveda how he serves the Rebishta mitzad his Nefesh HaBahamis. And what are we told? That when it comes to Bishvat, this is the Horah that we get, how we are supposed to awaken ourselves to serve the Rebishta with both levels. Say with the Nefesh Olekis that is within us, naturally, but even the Nefesh HaBahamis has to be converted, and that with him too we should also serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is how we use the expression Sa'irim, which refers to barley. Sa'ira, however, is also relates to the word Malosh Shir, limitation. There's a shear, every mitzvah has a shear. Thank you. And here it's applied, as the Rebbe is saying, that everybody, kol chad v'chad, every person, lefum shi'ura delay, according to his realm, according to his limitation, this is an Aveda which is required from everybody. As explained in the Chassidus at length, that Avedas Hashem begins at the level of Iskafia, and when one is successful in the level of Iskafia, of controlling his Yetzer Hara, then what he reaches to is the level of his Hapcha, how he totally turns around the Yetzer Hara, turns him over, that he winds up serving the Rebishter with his Yetzer Hara as well. This is what we say in davening, B'chol levavcha, v'ahavtos Hashem Elokecha, B'chol levavcha. So what do we say, B'chol levavcha? B'shnei Yetzarecha, to serve the Rebishter with both Yetzers. Furthermore, the Nefesh HaBahamis is really the one that comes first into the person. Basically, because Because the Nefesh Elokis reaches a person first when he becomes Bar Mitzvah or a girl at Bas Mitzvah, even though it's brought in Sforim, that there is a beginning of the entry of the Nefesh Elokis at the Bris. So first of all, it's not complete. Final stage happens by Bar Mitzvah. But even for the beginning of the Nefesh, the Tchilas Knisas of the Nefesh Elokis, which this does transpire at the Bris, but when a person is born, immediately the Nefesh Abahamis is there right away. And this is what we are emphasizing, the Avodah of Tu B'Shvat, relating to both Chita and Sa'ira, Nefesh Elokis as well as to the Nefesh Abahamis, that both of these levels are utilized fully to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And all of this has a shayches to Eretz. Pasuk uses the expression, Eretz, a land of Chita U'Sa'ira. What is the Indian of Eretz? So we know that famous Chazal, why is land called Eretz? And Chazal respond, Lo manikra shma Eretz, because the Rotzesa Lasa is Rotzain Koina. Eretz relates to the expression of Rotzain, of having desire to fulfill the wish of its master. Furthermore, Eretz is Meloshen Rotz, Meloshen running. In other words, to combining both Taichen, to run. In other words, as fast as possible to get involved to fulfill the wish of the master. And here comes the Taich of the Baal Shem Tov. There's a Taich of the Baal Shem Tov. The Pasuk, Kisiyu atem eretz chayfetz. That you are considered a eretz chayfetz, a desirable piece of land. And this Pasuk refers to Yidden. So the Baal Shem Tov says, why are Yidden compared to land? Just like in land, we constantly keep on finding and discovering minerals and valuables, diamonds and valuable stones, and we constantly keep on finding more and more. In other words, the source of valuables, the source of extreme valuables in land is endless. The same, says the Baal Shem Tov, is regarding Yidden. Yidden possess within themselves an endless source of valuables, of most precious diamonds and most precious stones. And when we're talking here about Eretz, Chita, U'Soira, it's referring to each and every Yid. And the Chita, U'Soira, these are the values which the land possesses. And all of these values are discovered, and these values are put into use, and they are used for what? Yid upgrades himself to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this is furthermore, we're talking about Pasuk is talking about Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael possesses all these valuables. What shaykhs does it have to every Yid? So the Rebbe says it's brought in Sfarim that every Yid, even to the extent of halacha, has Dalid Amos in Eretz Yisrael. And this is reflected in halacha. We're supposed to make a prusbul. When it comes Shmita, we make a prusbul so that we do not lose out the loans that we have outstanding, that people owe us money. So the halacha is, who can make a prusbul? Only the one who has a piece of land in Eretz Yisrael. And nonetheless, we see that everybody makes a prusbul. Why? Because this is an accepted factor that every Yid has his own Daled Amos in Eretz Yisrael. Especially this year. So at the beginning of the year came out to be on Shabbos. So Rosh Hashanah came out to be on Shabbos. So when Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, we know we do not have to blow shofar. The Alter Rebbe explains why don't we have to blow shofar. Because the accomplishment that shofar does, the whole inyan that shofar accomplishes, when Rosh Hashanah comes out to be on Shabbos, we have the same accomplishment mitzad the fact that it is Shabbos. That's why we do not have to blow the shofar on Shabbos. The Rebbe explains it in details. The Rebbe mentioned that by the fact that the closing of the mouth, the meitzar of the mouth, which this is an expression of bittul, and this produces the sound of the shofar, there is no need for this on Shabbos, because Shabbos gives us all these achievements without blowing the shofar. However, now when we have Tu B'Shvat, we have Tu B'Shvat also on Shabbos. And when Tu B'Shvat comes out on this Shabbos, it's a plus. Because at Tesvav Shvat, Mishasa B'Shvat, we make brachas on fruit. And we know that we are supposed to make 100 brachas every day. And Shulchan Aruch discusses and looks for ways how can we fulfill it on Shabbos. Because during the week we have longer Shemona Esreis. However, during Shabbos we have shorter Shemona Esreis. So how do we fulfill the 100 brachas? So now that Chamishasa B'Shvat comes out on a Shabbos and we are making the brachas on the fruit, so the Shabbos is helping us to fulfill the concept of Tu B'Shvat. And in Gemara there's a machlokes when Rosh Hashanah Leilani says whether it is Rosh Chodesh Shvat or Tu B'Shvat. We follow the opinion of Beis Hillel, and according to Beis Hillel, it is in the 15th of Shvat. However, for those that follow the opinion of Beis Shammai, according to Beis Shammai, it is Rosh Chodesh Shvat. So Rabbi says, even according to Beis Shammai, Rosh Chodesh Shvat was also on a Shabbos. So according to everyone, Chamishasa B'Shvat this year was on a Shabbos. Until we will ultimately reach, as we say in the bracha, which we make when we eat the special fruit that Eretz Yisrael is praised with, lechol mipirya v'lizboya mituva, to be able to enjoy the fruit of Eretz Yisrael. What's pshat the fruit of Eretz Yisrael? So the Rebbe Chazal tell us, ein Torah k'Torah Eretz Yisrael. One of the highest madregas in Torah is the Torah of Eretz Yisrael. Even though for those who are learning Bavli, it's not Torah Eretz Yisrael, but nonetheless, Bavli is based on Mishnah. And Mishnah is Torah Eretz Yisrael. So through our Avodah, fulfilling properly the message of Chamishasa B'Av, we will be, Chamishasa B'Shvat, Chamishasa B'Shvat, the whole union of this message which we just discussed, by fulfilling all of this properly, this will lead that we will have it in Gashmis, that we will have, wherever we will be Eretz Yisrael, where Mashiach will come, the entire world will become Eretz Yisrael. And then we will be able to eat from the fruit of Eretz Yisrael. And through our Avodah B'Zman HaGolus, we become vessels, we become Kalim to be able to absorb all the great revelations which will be when Mashiach will come. But a word here, that it is through the learning of Chassidus that this elevates a Yid, that he reaches to the level of the pasuk v'maskilim yazhiru kizoya harakia. Those maskilim, the intelligent, those who are intelligent in the knowledge of godliness, they will shine like the shine of the heaven. Then later in the second Sikha, the Rebbe continued, in conjunction to what we discussed here, and explained all the 7 fruits which the pasuk discusses: Eretz, Chito, Soira, Gefen, Useino, Verimoin, V'zei Shem, and Udvash. How all of this relates in Avodas Hashem. And all of this based on the taich of Eretz, that Eretz refers to Yidden. And just like the land has an enormous amount of minerals and valuables within it, the same thing Yidden do. And what is the Avodah of Tu B'Shvat? Like the Avodah B'chlal of Yidden, and specifically of Tu B'Shvat, is to reveal all of these valuables that are in the Eretz. And this is why the pasuk goes on with the explanation: Eretz, Chito, Soiro, Gefen, Useino. So Chito, Soiro, we basically explained that Chita relates to the Nefesh Elikis, and Soiro relates to the Nefesh Abahamis. Though the question arises, we know that in Avodas Hashem, what is supposed to be first is Sur Meira. Once we are successful in Sur Meira, staying away from the evil, then we do Asay Tov. So if so, the Seder should have been first. Seder first should have been that that we should be mevarer, we should be uplifting the nefesh habahamis, which is so'ira, and from that we will come to chita. But in the pasuk we find the seder is different. Why? Because this is really the seder in Avodas Hashem. The seder in Avodas Hashem is first we start with the positive, and this is how we begin our day. We go from step to step. But by going from step to step, first we start v'ahavta, like the Rebbe. After we are at the level of v'ahavta, then we go into the general v'ahavta. Then we go into more details, b'chol levavcha, meaning b'shnei yitzarach. However, the first thing that a yid does when he wakes up in the morning is the expression of moidani, which is in the positive sense, getting closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then from the moidani transpires into the v'ahavta. Once he's gone through that, then he comes through the level of the chol levavcha b'shnei yitzarach. But the beginning is in the positive sense. In the positive sense, and that is chita, the avodah with the nefesh elokis. And that is what we find, that the first mitzvah that a yid is mekayim when he becomes bar mitzvah is the mitzvah of krishma. Krishma, of the night krishma. Why? Because when a child becomes bar mitzvah, that means as soon as he's entered, as soon as it becomes night and it's his 13th birthday, that is when he comes bar mitzvah. So if that is when he becomes bar mitzvah, what is the first mitzvah that he has an opportunity to fulfill? That is the mitzvah of krishma. Rabbi mentioned, it's brought in Svarim, that is why Rabbi Yehuda Nasi shows that the beginning of Mishnah should be with Me'emes HaKoyer and Shema Ba'arvin, which is the mitzvah of learning Krishma at night, because this is really the first mitzvah that a person has the opportunity to fulfill. And this derech ha'avodah is really for everyone, for Yidden as well as for Geirim. Everybody, this is the derech ha'avodah, to begin first with chita, and once we were successful in chita, that is when we go further, and we go further in se'oira, meaning working also with the nefesh habahamis, and that the nefesh habahamis should also become nizbarer, to lift all the sparks of kedusha from the nefesh habahamis, and he too should begin serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Then we go on to gefen. Gefen means grapes. What's the whole idea of a grape? Grape produces wine, and the whole inyan of wine brings simcha, and primarily nicht nas yayin yotzar soit. When one drinks wine, it reveals whatever he has within him. So what do we mean in Ruchnius? To reveal and bring everything that's hidden, to bring that into action, to reveal all of that and bring that into action. Avodas Hashem, that is the concept of yayin. Then the pasuk goes on with te'ena. Te'ena means figs. There's an opinion in Chazal that Eitz Hadas te'ena hoisa. That the Eitz Hadas was te'ena. And the Rebbe, using the expression te'ena, there are those that te'ena heim evakshim. They are always looking for complaints. He's trying to get at the word te'ena, meaning a fig, with the te'ena, those who are looking for tinies, those are looking for complaints. In other words, not being in a clear stage is serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What do we say is the avodah of te'ena? To be mafchin, a person should go ahead and divide and have a clear approach. What is toiv and what is ra? Just like by Eitz Hadas. Eitz Hadas was a mixture of toiv and ra. How do we rectify it now? We are mafchin, we choose bein toiv la ra. That is the avodah of te'ena. Then we come to rimoin. Rimoin means we call today a Chinese apple, pomegranate. The famous Gemara, the Gemara says that even those well, uses the expression Poisha Yisrael, those who are not acting properly, they too are meleim mitzvahs kirimai. They are full with mitzvahs like kirima, like a pomegranate. So the Rebbe says they are, and a pomegranate we know there are many, many pits. Well, it says the number of pits that is in a pomegranate has to be at least 248, corresponding to the 248 Ramach mitzvahs asay. The rest of the mitzvahs, the 365 mitzvahs, these are mitzvahs loisa asay. So for a loisa asay, that's not so he just sits back and does not do anything. He doesn't have to go out. There's no act involved to fulfill these mitzvahs. When we're talking about the pits and the pomegranate, it's bringing out positive acts in fulfilling mitzvahs. Though there's a difference between the pits and the grape and the pits and the pomegranate. The minute you look at a grape, at least most grapes, and you start working with a grape, you notice the pits in it right away. The pits in the pomegranate are more covered than the pits in the grape. And in the pomegranate, there are many, many pits. However, these are not part of the fruit. These are all each individual pits. What does it mean? Even though the person who is Mekayim mitzvahs, the mitzvahs are not part of him, he and the mitzvahs are still two separate inyanim. Nonetheless, what do we say? That this is also dear and valuable by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that is what we say, that even those who are not acting properly, still them too are meleim mitzvahs, kirim, and they are full with mitzvahs like the rim. Then the pasuk goes on, and again says, Eretz zei shemen udvosh. And again repeating the word Eretz. In halacha it's negeyeh that if we have several of these fruits in front of us, and we have a question, what should we eat first, what should we make a bracha on first? So in halacha, the psak din is, anything which is closest to the word Eretz, we make a bracha on first. So now we have again a repeat of the word Eretz, and here the pasuk goes on with Eretz zei shemen udvosh. Olives and dvosh, honey. What is honey? Honey, dates. Dates is relate to honey. In other words, here we are going into a yet higher level of avodah. Here we are going into the avodah of Ezayis. What's the inyan of Ezayis? How do we produce oil from Ezayis? The Ezayis has to be crushed. And the same thing we are talking in Ruchnias, to going through the level spiritually, the inyan of crushing, and that is when one produces the oil. Then we come to the dates. What's the inyan of the date? Well, it brings the pasuk, Tzadik katomo yifroch. Pasuk that says that a tzaddik blossoms and grows like a tama, like a date tree. Chazal tell us that it takes 70 years for a tree of dates to grow. What does this mean in Ruchnias? What is the inyan of 70? In other words, this brings out a level of shleimus ha'avodah. He has already reached his highest level in avodah, reached a level that he was mevarer. Each midah, there are 7 midas, and each of the midas have 10 koiches. 7 times 10 is 70. In other words, he reached to the highest level, to the complete shleimus ha'avodah, and that's the inyan of dvash. This is the shleimus, the final stage in the sachakal of all of this which we discussed, to ultimately to reach to the level of dvash, tzadik hatoma yifrach, to the level of bo bayomim. In other words, when he comes at inyan of 70, what pasuk by Avraham Avinu, Avram zokein bo bayomim. Avram got old, and he came with his days. Since he came with his days, so Chassidus asked, obviously it's an extra expression in the Pasuk. The Pasuk says, Avram got old, verstehen wir that he was Bo Bayomim. So Chassidus explains, the advantage of Avram was Bo Bayomim, that he accounted for all his days. He wasn't just old. Every day had its accomplishments. The same thing we're talking here compared to the Tamar tree, which expresses an inyan of Shleimus. The same thing in Avodas Hashem. Mela, this would lead to Haboyim Yashresh Yaakov, which is a pasuk, Yotzitz Uforach Yisrael, the growth of Yidden. That the growth of Yidden will also be in such a way that even though when one plants he only puts in a few kav, which is a very small quantity, when it grows, it produces a tremendous amount. Same thing we're talking in Ruchniist, through our Avodah now, what we are planting, the growth will be at a very, very high level until we reach the highest level of growth. The heights of all heights, which that will be when Mashiach will come.